Please marry our daddy. The little boy's voice echoed through the café. The whole room went still. Even the coffee machine stopped humming. I froze with the tray in my hands, half a step away from their table. 3 pairs of tiny eyes stared up at me, bright, identical, and full of innocent hope. Please, the smallest one repeated, his little hands clasped together. Marry our daddy. The man sitting across from them, their father, went pale. For a moment he didn't move. His jaw clenched, his eyes darkened. He looked like he wanted the ground to swallow him whole. Eli, he said quietly, his voice low but firm. That's enough. But Daddy, another boy piped up. You said you're lonely. And he's nice. He smiled at us. My throat tightened. I wanted to disappear. People were whispering, smiling behind their cups. I stood there, red to my ears, gripping the tray like it was a shield. I'm sorry, the man finally said, looking up at me. His voice was calm, deep, almost too composed. They don't know what they're saying. I shook my head quickly. It's okay. Really. Kids just say things. He exhaled slowly, as if trying to hold on to the last strand of patience he had left. Still, he said quietly, I apologize. Then he turned to his children. Eat your food. Their little heads bent down instantly, forks clinking against plates. The tension loosened, just a little. I placed their bill on the table and managed a small smile. No harm done, I murmured. He nodded, not quite meeting my eyes. Then he took out his wallet, a sleek black thing that looked expensive, and slipped a card beneath the check. His fingers brushed mine for half a second. A static charge shot through me. I pulled back too quickly, pretending to fix my apron. Keep the change, he said softly. And then, like that, he gathered his kids and left, leaving behind the faint scent of his cologne and a strange heaviness I couldn't name. It should have ended there, but it didn't. That morning had started like every other. Quiet, predictable, safe. I'd been working at the café for almost 2 years. It wasn't glamorous, but I liked it. The warm air, the smell of coffee, the way sunlight slanted through the windows. It made the world feel softer, smaller. Manageable. I wasn't expecting anyone important to walk in. And definitely not him. He had entered with his children just before noon, tall, broad-shouldered, and dressed in black. His presence was so sharp it cut the noise in half. He didn't look around, didn't smile, just guided the 3 kids to a booth by the window. They followed obediently, their little shoes tapping against the tiled floor. Each one of them was a perfect copy of the other, same dark hair, same eyes, same curious glances at everything. When I came to take their order, one of them grinned up at me. Hi, mister. You smell like sugar. Their father's head jerked up. Ethan, he said quietly. Manners. The boy giggled. Sorry, Daddy. I couldn't help but smile. It's fine. I do smell like sugar. I work here. The smallest boy, Eli, I would later learn, asked, Can we have pancakes? You had pancakes yesterday, their father reminded him. But these ones smell different, Eli insisted. Please. A soft sigh escaped the man's lips. Fine, he said, voice low. But just 1 plate to share. Yay, all 3 cheered. For a moment, I saw something almost tender flicker across his face, a ghost of a smile. It was gone in a heartbeat. He turned to me. And 1 black coffee. I wrote down the order quickly, suddenly too aware of his eyes on me. They were gray. Cold, tired, unreadable. Coming right up, I said, and walked away before my voice could tremble. When I returned with the food, the children were giggling about syrup and strawberries. Their father sat quietly, stirring his coffee, pretending not to notice their chaos. But every so often his hand reached out, steadying a cup, wiping a tiny chin, cutting pancakes into perfect pieces. He didn't say much, but his care was obvious. I stood there for a moment too long, watching him. He noticed. Our eyes met. And I swear, for 1 second, something in his gaze softened. Like maybe behind that perfectly built wall, he was just a man trying not to break. I smiled, small, polite, and started to walk away. That's when Eli spoke. Please marry our daddy. The rest you already know. After they left, I found his business card on the table. I shouldn't have looked at it, but I did. Damian Hale, CEO, Hale Group Holdings. So that's who he was. The man who practically owned half the city. And somehow his triplets had asked me, a cafe waiter, to marry him. I laughed quietly to myself and slid the card into my apron pocket, meaning to throw it away later. But I didn't. That night, I sat by my window, the card still on my desk. It was stupid, really. I didn't even know why I kept looking at it. I told myself it was just curiosity. That was all. That maybe I'd search his name online later, just to see what kind of man he really was. But part of me knew it wasn't curiosity. It was something else. Something that made my chest tighten when I remembered the way his children smiled. The way he said thank you like it was a habit he'd almost forgotten. The way his eyes had looked, tired, lonely, but still searching. My phone rang. I glanced at the screen, an unknown number. "Hello," I said, cautious. There was a pause. Then a low, familiar voice. "Is this Henry?" "From the café." My heart stuttered. "Yes. Who's this?" "Damian Hale." I sat up straighter. "Oh, Mr. Hale. Good evening, sir. I hope I'm not disturbing you." "No, not at all," I lied. My pulse was racing. I wanted to apologize. Again. For earlier. "You don't have to." "Really?" "I do," he said. "They shouldn't have said that." I smiled faintly. "They were sweet." "It's okay." Silence. A breath. Then. "They liked you." That caught me off guard. "They did." "Yes," he said quietly. "They don't warm up to people easily." Something in his tone softened, barely noticeable but real. "Would you meet me tomorrow?" he asked suddenly. I blinked. "Meet you?" "At my house," he said. "There's something I'd like to discuss." I hesitated. "Mr. Hale, It's about the children," he added, voice calm. "Nothing else." I hesitated again. "What time?" 9 in the morning. "My assistant will send the address." I didn't know what to say. "All right. I'll be there." "Good," he said. Then softer. "Thank you, Henry." The call ended, and I sat there, staring at the dark screen, the echo of his voice still in my ears. That night, I didn't sleep. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw those kids, their smiles, their bright eyes, their tiny voices echoing across the café. "Please marry our daddy." I hadn't planned on seeing him again, but maybe life had already decided for me, because somehow that single sentence, innocent and childish, had changed everything. I barely slept that night. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw their faces. The triplets. Those innocent smiles. And him. Damian Hale. The man whose kids had asked me to marry him. The man who'd called me hours later, calm and polite, as if fate itself had tied a thread between us. By morning, I'd almost convinced myself not to go. But something stronger than reason pulled me out of bed. Curiosity. Maybe stupidity. Or something I didn't want to name. The address his assistant texted looked unreal. A tall, glass mansion perched on a quiet hill, overlooking the city. Gates taller than my old apartment building. Even the air smelled expensive. I hesitated outside the massive front door, staring at my reflection in the glass. My plain shirt, cheap shoes, nervous eyes. I didn't belong here. Before I could knock twice, the door opened. "Mr. Hale is expecting you," the housekeeper said with a polite nod. She led me through the quiet hallways, all marble floors and framed photos of the triplets. There they were again, smiling from the walls, tiny, beautiful, full of life. And there he was, in the background of one picture, holding them in his arms but looking straight ahead, his smile tight and lonely. "Right through here," the woman said. He was waiting in what looked like a private study. Sunlight spilled through tall windows, lighting up the sharp lines of his face. He was in a dark suit, no tie, sleeves rolled up. He looked up as I entered. "Henry." Just my name, but it sounded different in his voice. Like it carried weight. "Mr. Hale," I said quickly, standing a bit too straight. "Please," he said, motioning to the chair across from him. "Sit." I did, careful not to touch anything. He studied me for a moment, that same unreadable expression from the café. Calm but guarded. Then he said quietly, "Thank you for coming." I nodded, waiting. "It's about what happened yesterday." I swallowed. "The kids?" He nodded. "Yes. They're usually well-behaved. But lately they've been different." "Different how?" I asked before I could stop myself. He leaned back, gaze distant. "Their mother passed away 2 years ago. They've been struggling since then." My chest tightened. "I'm sorry." He gave a small nod. "They've had nannies, teachers, therapists. But no one sticks. No one they trust. Until you." "Me?" "Yes." His eyes met mine again, steady and intent. "Yesterday, after we left the café, they wouldn't stop talking about you. They said you were kind. That you smiled at them like their mother used to." The air between us went still. "I'm not asking for anything strange," he continued quietly. "But I need your help." "My help?" He nodded once. Be around them. Spend time with them for a while. Maybe they'll open up again. I blinked, unsure I heard him right. You want me to what? Babysit them? Not exactly, he said. Just accompany them. You'd be compensated, of course. He slid an envelope across the desk. I didn't open it, but I could already feel it was thick. Mr. Hale, I don't think. It's just temporary, he said, interrupting softly. A few weeks, maybe less. They've grown attached to you. I'd be grateful if you agreed. His voice dipped lower on that last part, almost like a plea. I should have said no. I should have walked away right then. But the way he looked at me, tired, desperate, trying so hard not to show it, made something twist inside my chest. So I said the stupidest thing I could have said. All right, I'll do it. The triplets squealed when they saw me again. Henry, you came. Daddy, you said maybe, but he came. Their joy filled the quiet house instantly. And just like that, I couldn't regret my choice. They dragged me around the living room, showing me their toys, their drawings, their secret hiding spots. For the first time, Damian looked peaceful. He stood by the window, arms folded, watching his kids with a faint smile that didn't quite reach his eyes. It was strange. I'd seen him yesterday as a powerful man, controlled, cold, unreachable. But seeing him now, surrounded by those tiny hands tugging his sleeve and calling him daddy, he looked different. Softer. Human. Hours passed quickly. The kids laughed, played, and even convinced me to help them bake cookies. By the time I was ready to leave, the kitchen looked like a sugar explosion. Damian leaned against the counter, watching me wipe frosting off one of the boys' cheeks. You're good with them, he said. I glanced up. They make it easy. His lips curved, the ghost of a smile. They haven't smiled like that in months. I didn't know what to say, so I just nodded. He walked closer, slow, measured steps that made my pulse quicken for no reason I could explain. Henry, he said, stopping just a few feet away. Thank you. His voice was quiet, sincere. I looked up at him, really looked. The faint shadows under his eyes, the way his jaw tightened like he was fighting something inside. He didn't look like a man used to asking for help. He looked like someone who had forgotten how to be gentle. Until now. Anytime, I said softly. They're good kids. He nodded once, but his eyes didn't leave mine. For a long, silent second, something heavy lingered between us. Something neither of us dared to name. Then one of the triplets ran in, breaking the spell. Daddy, Henry said we can bake again tomorrow. Damian blinked, then turned toward his son. Did he? The boy grinned. Yes. He looked back at me, that small, unreadable smirk tugging at his lips. Then I suppose you'll be back tomorrow. I laughed softly. I guess I will. The next few days became a rhythm I didn't expect. Mornings at the café. Afternoons with the kids. Evenings when Damian would come home late, loosen his tie, and quietly ask how they'd been. Sometimes he'd join us, sitting on the floor, building blocks with his sons. Other times, he'd just watch from a distance, that lonely look creeping into his eyes again. And sometimes, our eyes met across the room. And neither of us looked away. One night, after putting the boys to bed, I found him in the study again, drink in hand, staring out the window. You should rest, I said quietly. He didn't turn. I don't sleep much. I hesitated. You work too hard. He chuckled under his breath. It keeps me from thinking. There was a sadness in his tone that made my heart ache. He finally turned to face me, his eyes tired but sharp. Why did you agree to this? What do you mean? He stepped closer. You didn't ask how much I'd pay. You didn't even hesitate. Why? I swallowed hard. Because your kids needed someone. And maybe you did too. The silence that followed was thick. Electric. He was standing too close now. I could feel his breath slow, uneven. His eyes searched mine for something, then stopped, almost as if he'd found it. And then he said, so quietly I almost didn't hear it. You remind me of her. My heart stopped. Her. He looked away. Their mother. A long pause. I wanted to ask more. But before I could, one of the boys called from upstairs, a sleepy, frightened voice. Damian turned immediately, the moment broken. I'll check on them, I said quickly, slipping past him. But as I climbed the stairs, I could still feel his gaze burning into my back. Later, when the house was quiet and I was about to leave, he appeared at the door again. Henry. I turned. He looked exhausted. Vulnerable, even. Thank you, he said again, softer this time. For being here. I smiled faintly. Good night, Mr. Hale. Damian, he corrected gently. Call me Damian. I froze, then nodded. Good night, Damian. And as I walked out into the cool night air, my heart wouldn't stop racing. Because somewhere deep down I knew. This wasn't just about the kids anymore. Something was changing. Something I couldn't stop. I didn't mean for it to happen. I didn't mean for any of it to happen. But sometimes life doesn't wait for you to be ready. It had been almost 2 weeks since I started spending time at Damian's house. 2 weeks of laughter, pancakes, bedtime stories, and quiet evenings where his kids clung to me like I'd always been there. And 2 weeks of stolen glances. Moments that lasted too long. Words that almost turned into something else. Something we both felt but pretended not to. That night started like any other. I had just finished helping the triplets with their homework. They were half asleep on the couch when Damian came in, tie loose, eyes weary. You're late again, I said softly, covering one of the boys with a blanket. He smiled faintly. They keep me longer every day. Maybe they know I'm trying to get home early. I laughed under my breath. You should rest. I will, he said, walking closer. After I thank you properly. I turned to face him. You already did. 12 times. Not like this, he murmured. His gaze dropped for a moment, not at my hands, not at the sleeping children, but at me. Straight through me. Something heavy filled the air. A pull I couldn't fight. I looked away first. I should go. Stay, he said quietly. Damian. Just stay a little longer. His voice wasn't a command. It was a plea. And against every reason I had left, I nodded. We moved to the balcony outside the living room. The night air was cool, the city below glowing like a sea of stars. He poured 2 glasses of wine, handed me one. You don't have to drink it. I took a small sip anyway. My hands shook a little. He noticed. You're nervous. I shouldn't be here. Maybe not, he said, eyes dark, unreadable. But I'm glad you are. I tried to laugh it off, but my heart was pounding too loudly. He leaned on the railing beside me, close enough that I could feel his warmth. Henry, he said quietly. I haven't felt this peace in a long time. I looked up at him. You have your kids. You have your world. And yet, he said, voice dropping lower, I still come home to silence. He looked at me then, and I knew. He wasn't talking about loneliness. He was talking about her. Their mother? I asked. He nodded slowly. She was kind. Too kind. She believed everyone had good in them. Even me. He laughed softly, but it wasn't joy. She died thinking I was a better man than I am. I didn't know what to say. He turned to me, eyes glassy with something sharp and raw. And then you walked into that café, smiled at my children like they mattered, and I. He stopped himself, jaw tightening. I didn't plan any of this. Neither did I whispered. We stood there in silence, the night pressing close around us. Then, faintly, one of the kids called from inside, a soft whimper, a bad dream. I turned instinctively to go, but Damian caught my wrist. Let me, he said, his voice barely a whisper. He went inside, his hand brushing mine as he passed. The touch lingered like fire. I stayed outside, trying to breathe, trying to quiet the storm in my chest. But when he came back a few minutes later, his steps slower, his eyes softer, everything shifted. They're asleep, he said. Good, I whispered. They need rest. He stepped closer again, just enough to blur the air between us. And what about you? What about me? When was the last time you rested? I smiled faintly. I don't remember. He reached up, his fingers brushing my cheek before I could move. Maybe it's time you do. The touch was gentle, hesitant, real. I should have stepped back. But I didn't. Because something inside me, something buried for years, came alive. And before I could stop myself, I whispered, Damian. He looked at me like he'd been waiting to hear his name on my lips. And then he kissed me. Soft at first. Careful. But it was enough to set everything spinning. I don't know how long it lasted. Seconds, maybe. But when he pulled away, breath uneven, he looked terrified. I shouldn't have done that, he said quickly. I'm sorry. Don't be, I whispered. He shook his head, stepping back, guilt clouding his face. This isn't fair to you. You didn't force me, I said quietly. His eyes searched mine, conflicted, heavy. You don't know what I'm capable of, Henry. I frowned. What do you mean? But he turned away, rubbing his temples. Forget it. It's late. Something was wrong. The way his voice broke. The way his hands trembled just slightly. He wasn't just afraid of me knowing him. He was afraid of something else. The next morning, I came back earlier than usual. The kids were in the garden, laughing, chasing each other. But Damian wasn't home. The housekeeper told me he'd left before dawn. No word on where he went. The triplets didn't seem to notice, too busy showing me their drawings. But when one of them handed me a paper, my chest tightened. It was a family picture. 3 little boys, me beside them, and Damian standing behind, holding my hand. Scrawled in bright crayon at the top were 4 shaky words. Our Daddy and Henry. My throat burned. I folded the paper carefully, pretending to smile. That's when my phone buzzed. A message. Unknown number. Stay away from Damian Hale. I froze. A chill crawled up my spine. Before I could react, another message appeared. He isn't who you think he is. I looked around the quiet garden, heart pounding. The kids were still laughing, innocent and unaware. I typed back before I could think. Who is this? No reply. Just silence. That night, when Damian finally returned, he looked different. His shirt was wrinkled, his knuckles bruised, his eyes darker than I'd ever seen. Are you okay? I asked, stepping toward him. He didn't answer right away, just loosened his tie and said quietly, Did anyone call you today? My stomach twisted. Why? He stared at me, unreadable. Just answer me. Yes, I said slowly. A message. From someone. He exhaled sharply, running a hand through his hair. What did it say? That I should stay away from you. He cursed under his breath, pacing. Damian, what's going on? He looked up at me, and in his eyes I saw it. Fear. Real fear. Henry, he said, voice low, strained. You need to trust me, no matter what happens. Can you do that? I stepped closer. Damian, you're scaring me. He didn't answer. He just reached out, pulled me into his arms, and whispered against my ear. They know about you. My blood went cold. Who? He pulled back, eyes burning with something fierce and desperate. People I used to work with. Dangerous people. I thought it was over, but... He stopped, glancing toward the window. Damian. He turned to me again, jaw tight. I'll explain everything. But not here. Not tonight. Then when? I whispered. He looked down, his hand still gripping mine. When it's safe. That was the moment I realized. Whatever had started as a simple favor wasn't simple anymore. And as I looked into his eyes, haunted, protective, trembling with secrets, I knew something terrible was coming. Something that would change everything. After that night, nothing felt the same. Not the house, not the air, not even the laughter of the triplets. Every sound made me jump. Every shadow felt like a warning. And every time I looked at Damian, I saw it, that quiet storm in his eyes. The fear he tried to hide. He barely slept. I could tell from the way he sat awake in the living room, staring out at nothing, phone in hand, waiting for a call that never came. When I asked what was going on, he said, It's nothing you need to worry about. But the way his jaw clenched told me everything. It was something. Something he didn't want me caught in. Too late for that. I was already in it. It started 2 days later. I was walking the boys back from school when I noticed a car parked across the street. Black, tinted windows, engine still running. It didn't move. Even when we got to the gate, I could feel eyes on us. The hairs on my neck stood up. I didn't tell Damian at first. I didn't want to scare the kids. But that night, after they were asleep, I found him in the study again, glass in hand, tie undone, the weight of 1,000 worries pressing down on his shoulders. Damian, I said softly, there was a car outside today. It didn't move for hours. He looked up instantly, eyes sharp. What kind of car? Black. No plates. He stood up so fast his chair scraped the floor. Henry, listen to me, he said, voice low, steady but tense. From now on, don't take the kids anywhere alone. Not even for a walk. Damian, you're scaring me. He ran a hand through his hair. They're watching. I thought I got rid of them, but I didn't. Who are they? I whispered. He met my gaze, silent for a long moment. Then, people I used to work with. The kind of men who make problems disappear. I walked away from that world, Henry, but walking away doesn't mean you're free. His voice cracked on that last word. My stomach turned cold. And now they know about me. He nodded slowly. You and the kids. The days that followed blurred into one long nightmare. Unfamiliar faces at the corner. Strange calls that went dead when I answered. The same car appearing outside the café when I worked my shift. I didn't say anything to the children. They were still innocent enough to believe everything was fine. But Damian grew quieter. More careful. Always checking locks. Always watching the cameras. Always pretending everything was okay when they were around. At night, we hardly talked. He'd sit on the couch, shoulders tense, phone always close. And me? I stayed because I couldn't imagine leaving them. Not him. Not those kids who now ran into my arms every morning shouting, "Henry's here." They trusted me, and I couldn't walk away. Then one evening, everything came crashing down. The power went out just after dinner. The house went dark, silent, too silent. "Probably the fuse," I said, forcing a calm tone, even though my heart was racing. Damian didn't move. He stood still, listening. Then, softly, he said, "Stay with the kids." I opened my mouth to ask why, but then I heard it, the faint crunch of footsteps outside. My blood froze. He grabbed a small gun from the drawer, something I hadn't even known was there, and motioned for me to stay quiet. The triplets were in the living room, wide-eyed. "Daddy," one of them whispered. "Shuh," Damian said softly. "It's okay. Everything's okay." But it wasn't. There was a sound at the door. Then glass shattering. "Henry, take them," he hissed. I grabbed the boys, heart hammering, and ran toward the back hallway. Behind us, a loud crash, men shouting. The kids were crying, clinging to me. I didn't think, I just ran, through the kitchen, out the side exit, down the dark path that led to the garden. We hid behind the greenhouse, my arms around all three of them, trying to muffle their sobs. Inside the house, I heard shouting. A gunshot. Then another. And then silence. I couldn't move. I couldn't breathe. Minutes felt like hours before footsteps crunched toward us. I almost screamed until I saw him. Damian. Blood on his sleeve, breathing hard, eyes wild but alive. "Are you hurt?" he asked, voice shaking. I shook my head, tears spilling down. "The boys." He looked at them, crouched beside me, pulled them into his arms. "They're safe," he whispered. "You're safe." But I could see it in his face, he wasn't. "Damian, your arm." "It's fine," he said quickly. "We need to get out of here." He led us to his car, the one parked behind the garage, and drove like a man being chased by ghosts. We ended up in a small cabin by the edge of the city. One of his safe houses, he said. The kids finally fell asleep after crying themselves out. And then it was just us. In the dark. Silence pressing between us. He sat across from me, his arm bandaged now, eyes red and tired. "I'm sorry," he said finally. "You didn't deserve any of this." I shook my head. "Don't apologize. Just tell me the truth." He exhaled slowly. "I used to move things. For people who didn't want to be seen. Money. Weapons. Names. I quit after she died, after my wife. But leaving them wasn't an option. They let me live because I promised to stay quiet. And now they think you broke that promise," I said quietly. He nodded. "And they'll come after anything I care about." That's when I understood. This wasn't just about him. It was about us. The kids. Me. Everything that had grown between us, quietly and carefully, now painted with danger. I stood and went to him. "Damian," I said softly, "you're not alone anymore." He looked up at me. That same look he'd given me the first day we met, when everything was simpler. Before the secrets. Before the blood. "Henry," he whispered, "if something happens to me." "Don't," I said sharply. "Don't say that." But he just smiled sadly. "Promise me you'll take care of them. The boys." I felt tears burn my eyes. "You'll be here to do that yourself." He reached up, his fingers brushing my cheek. I want to believe that. The moment hung between us, fragile, full of everything we couldn't say. Then suddenly a sound outside. Engines. Lights flashing through the cracks of the cabin window. Damian stood instantly, gun in hand. "Stay here," he said. "Damian." He looked back at me, eyes fierce. "Lock the door. Don't open it for anyone but me." Then he was gone. I held the kids close, listening to the chaos outside. Shouting, engines revving, the echo of another gunshot. The world went silent again. Then the door creaked open. I froze, holding my breath. And then his voice. "Henry." He was there. Blood on his shirt, but standing. Breathing. Alive. I ran to him, caught him as he stumbled. "They're gone," he whispered. "It's over." He collapsed against me, trembling, exhausted, bleeding. "Damian." He smiled weakly, fingers gripping mine. "You're safe now." Tears blurred my vision. "You're hurt." "I'll live," he breathed. "Because of you." And then his eyes closed. I held him there, the sound of the children stirring behind me, my heart breaking and racing all at once. Hours later, dawn crept through the window. The boys were asleep again, curled up beside their father. He was still breathing, weak but steady. I sat beside them, watching the light touch his face. And in that quiet, I finally whispered what I'd never dared to say out loud. Please marry our daddy. The same words his sons had spoken the day everything began. Only this time I meant it. Not as a joke. Not as a child's wish. But as a promise. Because no matter what came next, danger, scars, shadows. I knew I'd already made my choice.